Are we actually going live? That's the question. Always gotta wait for YouTube to kick in. There we go. Okay, cool. And again, because I'm looking at OBS and also YouTube, I'm gonna assume you can hear me and everything's great. So what I want to do is, of course, we just yesterday I released a video where I was talking about Hurricane Helene. I actually had waited until the 30th to record that, and then of course I actually edited it for 7 straight hours the day before, so that was the 5th. And that's why it came out when it did, and it has a bunch of stuff all the way through the 5th, including testimonies and pictures and footage and everything else. So it is kind of up to date to that day. That said, the reason why I really wanted to talk about Hurricane Milton isn't necessarily because of why everyone else is talking about it, which is, of course, that it just, within 24 hours, it just went from a tropical storm to a Cat 5 like that, like overnight, literally overnight. I remember yesterday, because I'm West Coast, so that's 3 o'clock our time, or excuse me, was it 2 or 3? I think it was 3 something our time in the afternoon. Jack, that is Joogsquad, did a live stream for about an hour that was going over all of the different data, all the hurricane maps, projections, the water temperature, which was actually shut up, I didn't ask, which was actually the very first thing I was actually thinking of when, as soon as I saw that recommended to me and I hopped into it, was like, check the water temperature, because that is the number one thing with hurricanes that causes these rapid intensifications. And sure enough, in the Gulf of Mexico, right in front of its trajectory where it was moving to, there was this massive swath of really warm water. And of course, it's directly off the coast of Tampa Bay. There is a reason why in Florida and in the Tampa Bay area they would refer to this as a 100-year storm, or the 100 years storm, and it's because of the fact that it has Tampa Bay has not sustained a direct hit landfall wise from a hurricane for just over 100 years, just over a century. So this is officially considered to be the 100-year storm if it does in fact make direct landfall, which more and more time is passing suggests that's exactly what will happen. It is one of the most densely populated metropolitan areas in the country, apparently, and areas in any state in the nation, in the United States. It is two of the most densely populated counties, Hillsborough and Pinellas counties. So that's potentially going to be devastating. They've already experienced a lot, especially in the more coastline communities that buffer the actual Bay Area, like St. Pete and Tampa, more inland. They actually have already experienced complete decimation of their homes and houses at a lot of those coastline communities, whether it's Clearwater or Treasure Island or wherever else, from just being barely brushed and skirted by Hurricane Helene. And so they're dealing with that a lot. Like, there's already cleanup efforts. There's still a bunch of businesses that can't operate. It's not a fun time. So imagine waiting 100+ years for a direct landfall of a hurricane, and you get a Cat 5 that is just still rapidly intensifying. It's now expected to go over 180 miles an hour, which is crazy. I do want to point out something really quickly, which is the fact that the wind speeds currently, or actually as of a handful of hours ago, was about 4 or 5 hours ago, was 160 mile an hour sustained winds. They're expecting it to get to over 180. Most of the models that I saw via Jack, again, Joogsquad, who lives in one of the coastline communities there along the Tampa Bay area, that's going to get a direct hit tomorrow, actually was showing on a lot of the models that it was supposed to de-intensify right as it was about to make landfall. I don't think it will. And the funny thing is that a lot of these models, no matter which one you use, has shown and did show that it would eventually hit, almost guaranteed, to Cat 5. But there was, of course, a handful of others that were thinking only a Cat 3. But about 70% of them looked like they thought it would de-intensify down from a major hurricane to a Cat 3 or Cat 2 before or as it was making landfall on the Tampa Bay area. Most of them were agreeing that it was going to hit Tampa Bay directly or just north of it. The interesting thing is, because of this, and now because of its rapid intensification, way faster than they predicted into a Cat 5, I all but guarantee that it is going to probably be at least a Cat 4 when it makes landfall. Because this is just, you use history of, especially of weather patterns like these, it's probably going to end up being at least a Cat 4 when it makes landfall. And that's not a fun time. Again, especially when you barely were brushed by Helene and it already decimated a bunch of houses and leveled them and just buried others in complete just sand dunes and everything else. It's you imagine a direct landfall, especially when you haven't experienced it in 100 years. You're probably not prepared for that because you're like, it's been 100 years. What are the odds? So obviously this is guaranteed to make landfall tomorrow. Wherever it may do, it's definitely going to be the central west Florida coast. That much at this point is blatantly clear. You can actually see it's going in a roughly east-northeast direction. One of the things that I want to relate to when it comes to Hurricane Helene and how this is related is, again, water has to go somewhere. And obviously rivers are going to go from the mountains, in this case Appalachia, down south, southeast, and east into the oceans or into reservoirs and other things like that. One thing you got to consider with the complete decimation of places like Chimney Rock and other townships and a lot of the other debris that's been building up and making these mud fields just of tons of debris and mud and everything else from Helene is that it's going to break dams. And again, water has to go somewhere and it's going to generally travel towards the ocean. That's what it wants to do. So naturally, this debris and all this excess water and any more rain that they get is going to be dumping further around and is going to have to eventually come down into the oceans. So communities that were relatively untouched by Helene are going to be directly impacted and see a lot of this debris eventually here pretty soon. Furthermore, of those, which there's very few rivers and systems that will actually travel far enough south to hit places like the Jacksonville area or North Florida. But something to consider with, again, a Cat 5 or Cat 4 hurricane like this is the bands will obviously reach to the panhandle of Florida, potentially up into the far reaches of the extreme south of Georgia. And a lot of the models have been showing since yesterday, when it's still a tropical storm over west of the Yucatan, is that Hurricane Milton obviously would probably have a northeastern trajectory, meaning it would skirt across Florida and probably hit directly onto St. Augustine, Daytona, and thus Jacksonville. So now you have the southern half, or at least southeastern quadrant of Georgia getting directly hit by this hurricane, if this continues this direction, which is so far is agreeing with those exact models. You also have to consider that guaranteed there's going to be a lot of that, again, aforementioned debris and water that has to eventually make its way down from North Carolina, South Carolina, and Tennessee out into the oceans. One of those is probably around the Savannah area. I'm sure the Savannah River and its tributaries are going to eventually dump into that area. And now you already have all this excess moisture and all this excess humidity and water in the air left behind by Helene and all the other fronts that are already present. That is going to be absorbed by Milton. And as it makes landfall and goes across Florida and potentially parts of the extreme southeast of Georgia, it's going to then not just have absorbed that, it has to dump it again as it de-escalates and falls apart. So then you have like twice as much water inundation that you had from Helene, because it took up Helene's moisture, sucked it into its vortex, and then has to dump it again as in this case the second hurricane dissipates. So the amount of water, aquatic devastation we've already seen from the amount of rivers that have been rechanneled and reoriented and shifted to different paths, and the reservoirs that have been destroyed, and all these other different, the lakes that have been altered and everything. You're going to see so much more of that flooding than you already have seen. And what's worse, I think, is that, again, you have months worth of effort that you have to make just to restore the power grid in phases from the damages that it suffers. And then from there, after that, after they can do that enough to where, say, water pumping stations and sanitization stations and everything, departments can receive that power, well, then they have to use it to go and identify all the damages, the complete destruction of their piping and their conduits and their mains and everything else. But they also have to then rebuild those things. And then once they do that and they can have enough power reliably and, of course, all these repairs in their water systems, then they still can't start their pumps and they still can't start their sanitization because guaranteed they're going to be inundated with that debris, that mud, that silt, and everything else. And they have to purge that out of their system first. And then maybe at that point, months down the road, at least for the most devastated places from Helene, will be able to do that. Of course, with them, they weren't prepared for that because it's pretty abnormal that you have that kind of devastation, let alone you take a direct hit from the remnants of a hurricane. Florida is much better prepared for that, but then again, their water table is non-existent because it's literally right there at the surface, pretty much. Almost all of Florida is nothing but a swamp that is directly connected to the oceans. And of course, a lot of the protection from hurricanes and storm surges is gone because they're emphasized on the white sandy beaches for rich bastards and tourists. And so they don't have their mangroves anymore. The reason why you have the thick mangrove lines along your coastline naturally is literally to prevent storm surge. That's the literal purpose of mangroves, is to stop storm surge and break it up. So because all of the West Coast pretty much, especially around the Tampa area, the Tampa Bay region of Florida, has like no mangroves left because they want their white sand beaches for their profitability for the rich bastards and the tourists, the storm surge is going to be egregious all along the Tampa Bay area, especially if they take a direct hit. You are screwed. One important factor when it comes down to these things, especially with hurricanes, is that it's worse off, obviously, especially storm surge wise, when it's a direct hit. So wherever the hurricane's traveling to, when it hits that direct landfall and hit, in this case the Tampa area, it obviously peaks the storm surge because it's pulling everything in with it. Whereas on the east coast of Florida, as in this case Hurricane Milton crosses you and it exits off the east coast, you aren't going to have to worry remotely as much as the west coast will be about storm surge because, again, it's a vortex. It's going to pull with it that water. That's why storm surge is always worst where it makes landfall, not where it exits the land. That's actually the least of your concern at that point. But again, the projections from the models, again, I highly recommend you check out Joogsquad from yesterday. So the October the 6th. Again, he's from the Tampa area. He lives on the coastline there. He's going to take a direct hit, obviously, so is his friends and family. They are, he did a hour-long live stream yesterday if you want to see all the different models, even from then. So you can also see how rapid this intensification was. It's wicked rapid. You have the ability to do that, and you'll actually be able to get a lot of first-hand information from somebody who's already experienced the brushing of Helene and how bad that was for Tampa, and what you can definitely expect from there. I like how, again, this is something that somebody mentions here is strange how it went from a disorganized tropical mess a couple of days ago to a Cat 5. I didn't think it was that weird, because again, when you look at the models even yesterday, in midday, you could actually see that it was already cyclonic. It was already rapidly turning into a proper hurricane. You didn't see an eye yet, but you could tell exactly where that eye was going to form. It was very clear. So it's interesting, I think more interesting, that people like this didn't already see its cyclonic energy forming and naturally doing what, again, history tells you it's going to do. Also, 924 millibar is identical, I believe, to what Hurricane Andrew was back in 1982. And Hurricane Andrew, that was an Atlantic hurricane though, but Hurricane Andrew was the one that broke open all the pet stores and all the different other pet enclosures that people had, that released all the pythons and the tegus and all these other uh, now famous, relentlessly breeding invasive species to Florida. It was Hurricane Andrew in 92. And it had, I think, a 927 millibar hurricane is what it was. Milton right now is, yeah, 900, well, it was as of 3-4 hours ago, is 924 millibar and is dropping rapidly. And of course, the lower the millibars are, the stronger the storm. So you don't want that for sure. One thing I want to mention is there's a handful of people that are saying, oh, it's a Cat 5 and it's set to become a Cat 6. There's no such thing as a Category 6 hurricane, at least not yet. With time, they might decide to add another category because, again, things change, things can intensify, things adapt. And so right now, at least, if you see anything regarding somebody saying, oh, it's about to become a Cat 6 or it is a Cat 6, just remember that that doesn't exist if you're not familiar. But yeah, look at this. This is insane. Monday, 11 a.m., 160. 2:30 p.m. 175. It is just rapidly intensifying. But look at this, though. I think this image is actually perfectly encapsulating of something that you might not realize. A lot of this right here that you see over Florida, over Georgia, that, a lot of that is quite literally the remnants and the moisture left over from Hurricane Helene's disintegration. This is a lot of her moisture left over. And Hurricane Milton, as I noted a little bit earlier, right, is sucking it in. It's sucking it in. So this is again why it's such an important thing to point out when it comes down to the water aspect of it, is the remnants of the last hurricane, being Helene, are being sucked in via the vortex into Milton, which also might have to do with this rapid of an intensification, where it's just like within 2-3 hours, it just like is threatening to double its strength. Its millibars are just plummeting. It's absolutely insane. But that's exactly it. You're taking all the remaining moisture from the prior hurricane, the current hurricane, in this case Milton, and it's sucking it in so that it can not only intensify further and get bigger, but it's going to have to dump that all over again. And that's what this is like remnants. A lot of that is remnants of Helene. That's not a fun time. Speaking back again about the Cat 6 claims, which again, Category 6 doesn't exist, at least not yet. But one thing I want to say about that is, and correct me if I'm wrong if you remember which hurricane it was, but my brain keeps telling me it was Katrina, and I'm not entirely sure if it was. But there was one hurricane within the last 35 years that I believe hit somewhere along the Gulf Coast really bad. That had, I believe it was 220 plus mile an hour sustained winds at one point, which is just chaotically insane. I mean, that is such an intense rarity that you have a hurricane with that intensity. If a Cat 6 existed, that should be a Cat 6, whatever that one was. It may not have been Katrina, it may have been one of the other ones, maybe it was Ian, I'm not 100% sure, but one of them had over 220, at one point, 220 mile an hour sustained winds. If a Cat 6 got invented, that should be a Cat 6. But yeah, look at the remnants of Helene getting sucked in there, vortexed. Good God. See, here's the fun fact, is they're showing the 4 there. I'm going to pause it there. Boom. This is where that massive ball of extreme heat is being held in the Gulf, is literally right here. And again, these are vortexes. They're like vacuums, superpowered vacuums. So the hurricane is likely going to suck that in. Plus, they are heat-seeking missiles. They will seek out what is going to benefit their life, basically, benefit their intensification. So this could actually take a much sharper curvature north to try to meet with that ridge of extremely warm water that's being held right in here and going off like this around the southern tip of Florida. And if it does that, it's going to definitely stay a 5 and probably get even more intense than it already is intensifying at the moment. And I'm assuming this is also 2:30, obviously. Well, no, obviously it has to be Atlantic time, so East Coast. Again, I'm West Coast, so it's 1:31 right now. So my feeble brain is incapable of simple math, especially when I'm processing any other information. I am not a numbers guy. But that's that would make it, yeah, that would make it 2 hours ago. So, oh god, I can't imagine what it is right now. This is all top. So latest I'd like to say, I mean, look at this. This is 4 hours ago. So it took 2 hours to drop, I think it was like somewhere around 1,000 millibars. And also, gang, what doesn't seem like much, but 15 miles an hour. So what it might be right now, who the hell knows? But yeah. The Ron DeSantis body language thing is actually very interesting here.
Finalize your storm preparations now. Enact your plan. I highly encourage you to evacuate.
That's a very nervous man.
We are preparing, and I have the state emergency response team preparing for the largest evacuation that we have seen, most likely since 2017 Hurricane Irma.
That's a very, very nervous person right there, is Ron DeSantis. Understandably. Especially considering, I think, with him being Ron, from what I know about him, he's probably also nervous because he knows that the federal government's not going to do jack shit. And they might also try to meddle. Like, again, has been confirmed by a lot of different volunteers that are victims themselves, by the way, using their own helicopters to try to fly and aid or do rescues or whatever else, have corroborated and confirmed, at least as of through about the 3rd of October, that FEMA down there, what little presence they have in North Carolina, was intentionally trying to shut down their makeshift airports and heliports and trying to shut them down and not stop them from being able to fly. They're trying to implement a no-fly zone. Pete Buttigieg, which actually I have that on my desktop. I have to figure out where it is. It would be an Elon Musk thing, so it might be this. No, that's Peter Hoetz, but that's like pure ego proof. Maybe it was this one. Nope. They're all very well topical to prove a point, though. It's one of these somewhere on my desktop. It's Peter. Those are both Peter Hoetz. No, that's not it. Nope, that's the Iraqi stuff. Jesus fucking Christ. It's somewhere over the rainbow on my desktop. I don't know why I'm having a hard time locating it. It should be right here, and I don't actually see it, which is concerning, because I don't know why that would just kind of dissipate. I don't think it was that early on, though. But maybe. No, that's that. These are the fly. Oh, yeah, that's okay. That's... Anyway, Pete Buttigieg straight up told everybody publicly via Elon Musk that... through my likes on my Twitter actually to find it, that like literally call his number directly. So not the department, Pete's own number directly if you are encountering FEMA or any other meddling going on, trying to prevent rescue missions and aid getting in there via makeshift heliports and airports, via volunteers that are likely victims themselves using their own equipment to do these things. Which, again, this is why I mentioned it in my Helene video. It's so reminiscent to Maui, because it wasn't FEMA, it wasn't the Red Cross, it wasn't the National Guard that was bringing in aid. It was immediately the locals and the residents of Hawaii that were doing it themselves on their own boats, on their own. They even made makeshift rafts, some of them got blow up, those little inflatable boats that people use to like drift down a river. They used those to then transfer from an actual boat or a dinghy to that, to then bring it on shore to get people aid. And then both FEMA and the National Guard were literally actively preventing them from being able to give anyone any of that aid. to eventually stopping it at the heliports and at the airports and at the ports and at anywhere where they found these people tended to go to try to get their own volunteer aid there. They kept blocking them for months on Maui. And so that's why like Helene currently is so familiar, because it's a repeat of that. They're trying to do that. So whether Pete Buttigieg is lying or not as a PR bluff, who the fuck knows? But that's why I mentioned that, because again, Ron DeSantis' extremely nervous body language, I think that's a part of it, is he knows and understands that it's going to probably be up to themselves in their own emergency management to actually help recover from this, which is, I guarantee that's a part of it. Besides the fact, again, the Tampa Bay area is, Pinellas and Hillsborough counties are some of the two most intensely heavily populated, densely populated counties in the entire country. There's so many people right there that's going to take a direct hit from Milton. It's scary shit. Latest is probably a dangerous thing because it's probably just a bunch of people, just commentating or whatever. But I know it's the irony. I'm commentating right now, but like, it's like a Cat 6. I've never seen a Cat 6 because it doesn't exist. Doesn't mean it can't at some point, but And like how this is all still, this is literally like within the last few minutes, people are sharing these things like, oh my god, 160 miles an hour, watch live. This is obviously from at least 2-3 hours ago. Because, actually, excuse me, not 2-3 hours ago. This is obviously, this live stream was obviously in this stuff 160 miles an hour. That's all technically from further back in time, like 4 or 5 hours ago, because it took 2 hours. And again, we've established now it's like about 2 hours ago, roughly, that it reached 175 miles an hour sustained winds. So this is already out of date, and this is how behind people still are. Even if they're trying to track it, people can't quite keep up, because I guess you can only take up in as much information as you can. I also mentioned it in my Hurricane Helene video from yesterday that I posted. Look at that blob. Good God. But I'm sorry, I'm too distracted by this knob. Because if you noticed in that earlier in this stream, one of the radars, this itself has a cyclonic thing. In fact, it's a counter cyclone. It's literally going the opposite direction, spinning the opposite direction. But it almost has its own eye. It's almost like as Hurricane Milton is pulling in the excess moisture left over from Helene's remnants, and it's pulling it in through its vortex, that it's actually almost creating its own mirror storm, its mirror hurricane. Because this is cyclonic. I mean, you can actually just see from looking at it. This is literally what Milton looked like not even 16 hours ago. It looked identical to this, obviously, except it was spinning the direction that Milton is still currently spinning. This is spinning the opposite direction. So it's interesting because that is entirely possible. It's like there's twin waterspouts, there's twin tornadoes. Why can't you have, and even triplicates, why can't you actually have a hurricane spawn a second hurricane as it pulls in moisture and remnants from another now defunct hurricane? I mean, it is kind of curious. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the massive swath of heat being held in the Gulf right now is literally right here. It's a massive pocket. It's right here off the edge of this thing. And as Milton goes this way, if it doesn't absorb this other cyclonic event that it seems to be creating, then you could potentially have this one intensify. But I'm not sure how the heck counter spinning storms would actually be able to function that well. I'm not sure about that. That is interesting, but I'm just saying it's very distracting, because my brain's just like, that is something to pay attention to. But as I said in the Hurricane Helene video, if I can remember what I was trying to get to before I interrupted myself so rudely, I don't remember. Damn it. My attention span's so shit. Man, too much information for my brain to process at once. I mean, look at how behind this stuff is. That's crazy. Like, you have all this infinitely available information, like, right at your fingertips, within minutes, if not literally within uh, current time. And this is still inaccurate as of 2 hours ago. We know as of 2 hours ago it intensified to 175. I feel like I'm going to start getting really repetitious with myself because that's just super interesting to note. And again, here's the remnants of Helene. It's leftover moisture that didn't get dumped, getting sucked into the vortex. Literally, this is the tail of Milton all the way to here. You can actually see it because of this steady line. It's all the way through here. So actually, its tail is already kind of here. Which, again, is interesting, because even if this was from 4 or 5 hours ago, and pulling in all this excess moisture from Helene, if it's already, its tail's already reaching there, and it has like a second sort of cyclone forming, that is super interesting. It's like its tail's getting extended as it gets pulled into Helene's leftover moisture. And again, that heat bloom is like right here. So even its edge of its tail is like right on the edge of it. That's such an interesting little observation. I'm just really concerned about it because, like, oh, I know what I was gonna say. Right. About my Hurricane Helene video that I released yesterday. I mentioned it in there how similar this is, not just in disaster response or lack thereof, to the aftermath in this case for Helene. So, you know, further north. To Katrina. It's very, very similar. But Milton here seems also like it's starting to identify as a Hurricane Katrina sibling, because, or a child, I suppose, of Hurricane Katrina, because it's getting really, it's not that big or broad, although its tail, again, is clearly going all the way out to here, which is the longest tail I've ever seen on a hurricane in my life. That is extended from and outside of the actual main storm. This, especially if it does combine with this little cyclonic event next door. I mean, imagine the size and the girth of that fucker. That's like the entire, literally, that would be geographically the size of the entire Yucatan. That's a lot of girth. So then at that point, that could also be, that would make it identical, like, just because of the massive fucking land coverage and size of Katrina. That could make Milton, if it merges with this, into another Katrina. And again, it's still going to keep growing because it's pulling in all that, well, excess moisture from Helene. So with a disaster response to Helene already being identical to that of Katrina, well, not quite, because Katrina did eventually, after a couple of weeks, get reluctant aid from physical aid from the National Guard, FEMA, and Red Cross via the government, obviously the feds. Very reluctantly, and they did a very half-assed job. Just, again, ask victims of Katrina. They still to this day hold a grudge against them for that, because that was inexcusably bad. Their response was just god-awful. And I still remember that, even though it was 2004 or 5. Like, it's otherwise very similar to Katrina's response. And then you tie that into, again, Milton's just constant rapid intensification and growth. If it merges with this, it's going to be the size of Yucatan. So it's going to be like Hurricane Katrina, literally, in terms of physical mass and structure at that point. And let me go to, see, you know, I'll use tab for the search. I never do. Hurricane Katrina. What was its sustained winds is what I'm looking for. Okay, it was 2005. August 1392. I mean, Helene is unlike, in terms of its size and its power, unlike Katrina as it was. Yesterday, as of, I think, like noon West Coast time, Pacific time, they figured they had at least guaranteed 227 people confirmed dead, and they, at the same time, that same morning, had estimated that via just a drone flyover, they saw along one of the rivers there at least 100 dead bodies. So that's like 330 people, and I'm sure they're going to keep finding so many more under the rubble, and God forbid, in the fucking, like, Lahar looking mess that that Lake Lure in the Chimney Rock area is right now. It's just I it looks like a fucking volcanic lahar. It is ridiculous. It's just thick mud flats, silt, and just endless sticks that used to be homes, houses, boats, cars, all these other and in that lahar like mess that Lake Lure is looking like alone, they're probably going to find another, at least I'd say 30 to 50 bodies in if they sift through that mud, that lahar. So you're looking at potentially 400, and there's probably by month's end, I would say. So say Halloween, they're probably going to have a confirmed at least 500, if not maybe upwards of 700 people dead from Helene. And again, it's like half the size and intensity of Katrina. You think about that death toll, that's about half of what Katrina had, which is insane. But normally when you look at this, right there on Wikipedia, the little preview, it shows the sustained wind speeds and the millibars and everything it was. Yeah, we know. Well, you say that, but that's horseshit. And I can prove that, but that would be a different video. 902 millibar. 175. I thought it was like 180, but that's only 5 off. So actually, Hurricane Katrina wasn't that bad in terms of sustained winds. I say that. Just because I know there was at least one that had, as I said earlier, over 220 miles an hour sustained winds within the last 30, 35 years, or maybe it was 40 years, which is, so this is pretty average, I feel like, for an intense, very large, hurricane, Cat 5. 902. It's, what was it? Yeah, as of 3 hours ago, Hurricane Milton was at 924 millibars. So, even if it doesn't match Katrina right now in size, or it never matches in size, it's already matching it exactly in highest winds, so sustained winds, and it's already matching it in, it's almost matching it in millibars. Whoops. I did not expect to see that when I looked up, like, I looked at the stats for Katrina. Oh god. What was Andrew again? Hurricane Andrew. 175 as well, but 922 millibars. And there's a reason why people only ever talk about, like, specifically when they talk about the worst hurricanes, they talk about Andrew and Katrina kind of in a class of their own. They both had the same highest winds. And again, this is a perfect match to Milton already. And Milton hasn't even gotten that close to reaching that pocket of intense warmth in the Gulf, which means it will inevitably highly intensify when it reaches that, because that's again how hurricanes thrive. That's how they build, is they seek out the heat, and there is so much heat being held in this pocket to the, what would be currently the due northeast of where it is right now. It's like due west of Tampa Bay region. So if it's already at 175, like Andrew and Katrina were at their highest, and it's already within 2, and this is 3 hours ago, it was within 2 millibars of the pressure of Andrew here, and thus within 20 of Katrina. Can you imagine, like, Milton's already trying to outdo both Andrew and also Katrina, which is terrifying. For Katrina, another way I guess I could think of that actually you could relate it to Katrina, Milton, is that Katrina was also a Gulf hurricane. The difference is that Katrina hit dead on into Louisiana, whereas Andrew, of course, was, again, a Atlantic hurricane. So it hit the East Coast, not the West. And again, the West Coast of Florida, as I aforementioned multiple times, because it bears repeating, has not really sustained a true, like, direct landfall hit from a major hurricane in over 100 years, just over 100 years. That is specifically the Tampa Bay area. So it's the central west coast, Gulf Coast of Florida. Which means they're not really that prepared. And again, as I aforementioned as well, they took out and removed all of their fucking mangroves for the tourism and for the rich bastards to enjoy their white sand perfect beaches and their unobstructed views. Because my views. But that's literally the purpose of fucking mangroves, is to protect against storm surges from things like fucking hurricanes, typhoons, cyclone, whatever you want to call them, depending on where you are in the world. I will always call it a hurricane, despite being a Pacific coaster. But it's... Again, this is why it's important to look back at these kind of things and consider that. Because again, this is like a toddler. Milton's a toddler right now. It's toddling itself and stumbling towards the fucking mass of really hot water in the Gulf in Tampa Bay. And it's already matched to Andrew and Katrina in highest registered wind speeds. And this is, again, as of 2 hours ago. 2 hours, 15 minutes ago. It matched their highest wind speeds already. And it's a toddler in terms of age. It's just reached toddler age, like 2-3-year-old equivalent. And human age, comparison. And millibars, it's 2 off of Andrew, again, as of 2 hours, 15 minutes ago. And thus 20 or so off of 22. Yeah, exactly 22 millibars off of Katrina. It's a toddler in its phase, in its age of growth. That's why it's important to look at your water maps and your water temperature maps. It's why it's good to look at, again, use history as your educator. Because if you watch history and you observe, you can come to better predict and better understand what's happening and how, like, storms are developing. In this case, this is how we know, this is how you gather this information to realize, holy shit, Milton's getting ambitious up in this bitch. Oh god, I can't imagine, man. If it's that early on in its lifespan, it's guaranteed to get way worse in terms of intensification as it approaches that warm spot. And as it gathers more of that moisture left over from Helene. Oh god. It's already matched to Katrina and Andrew. That is insane. That is insane. Oh my god. If I was a Floridian, I would already have, just like Jack Joogsquad, who again lives on the west coast of Florida, right in the Tampa area, who's documenting this stuff himself firsthand, by the way. So I highly encourage you to go check out his channel and keep an eye on that. But this is like, now my brain's starting to get overwhelmed, because it's like, this is wow. But I would have all these different websites up, including like the literal mapping that shows the water temperatures, right? And water patterns, current patterns. Because then I could just pop there right now, because I don't know what it is called. I don't remember. If I was a Floridian or somebody who experiences hurricanes, I would have it up automatically so I could show you. But like, actually, I guess I could open up a tab, couldn't I? Because although now I think about it, the power went out, but it should still be showing. Thank God for Firefox for these features. Recently closed tabs, it would be. Let's see. Is this the 100-year storm? There we go. I'm gonna try to find the it wasn't too far in. By the way, again, this was he streamed this so he had all the maps, NOAA, all, again, GFS, I think it's called GFS or something, or GFIS maps, and all this other shit he had going. Again, because he's a Floridian. He literally lives right here on the peninsula. And is it Pinellas there? I thought Pinellas is where Tampa was in Hillsborough. No, Hillsborough is where Tampa is. Right, okay. St. Pete and all that, Clearwater is in Pinellas. I guess it makes sense because it's close to Peninsula. Where was the map that had the fucking temperatures? Was that it? That was... Yeah, that's it. YouTube's gonna force me to play it. Look at this shit. Look at this fucking intense temperature. So Hurricane Milton is right here right now. And this was, again, like I think around 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I think it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon yesterday that I saw this, which was an hour after he finished, because it's an hour stream, as you can see. It was actually 59 minutes before. So he's obviously edited a little bit. But so an hour-long stream, I caught it right as he ended it. So, and that was at 3 o'clock. So it would have been 1 o'clock Pacific time, which means it was 10 a.m. his time, Atlantic time, East Coast time. And this is with a map of the water temperatures. And thus, obviously, you can catch the currents. Because typically, with warmth, as you can tell, the warm water is what has the strongest current. And again, this is what hurricanes live for. This is what they seek out. They seek out the hot pockets of water so that they can, like any life in a way, it's almost like they're sentient, but they seek it out so they can intensify and they can grow their life force, basically. So I'm not sure exactly what the temperatures are supposed to be in terms of the color codes. I just know, obviously, like anybody in the world knows, the more warm the colors are, the more warm the water is. Like, look at how warm this band is. That's insane. Oh my god, that's gotta be blazing. But like, I don't know how cold this is right here. There's obviously streaks of warmer water, but I don't know how cold it. If I knew if they had a key, I wish this website that he's showing had a key. If they do, it's probably behind him, which sucks. But if it had a key, I'd like to know what the temperature is in these colors close to land, because if you did, then you get a better idea. Actually, I can go to this now. I think about it right now, because obviously I have the URL. Earth.nullschool.net. Did I ask? Let him die. Null school. Interesting. Zero school, huh? Earth.nullschool.net. Okay. Earth.nullschool.net. Oops, .net. Okay. Let's get a look at the... Actually, this isn't going to be exact, is it? Is it? Let me see. Wrong one. Current ocean surface currents orthographic. Wind. I don't want wind. That explains a lot. Woo! Look at the size of this fucker. I think that was the one that was already off of Cabo Verde before. Yes. Oh, wow. Actually, yeah. This had to have been that one, right? It could have been this one, I guess. Actually, no. This is Cabo Verde. That's Cabo Verde. My bad. So it might be this one. Yeah, I think it was actually this one. If it was that one, though, that's... What direction is that fucker going? I wonder. There's actually cyclonic energy happening here. Right off the coast of England and France, Brittany. That thing's big. That's a big boy. You. Hello. How you doing, buddy? Well, anyway. Excuse me while my autistic brain takes 5 years to process information and not be distracted. Ocean surface. Sous français. I got wind. I want ocean. Ocean. Because English is fucking stupid. Ocean surface courants orthographic. For a second, I thought I got dyslexic with that lettering. Sorry. And then that. What is this called again? My brain is defaulting. Nothing for this date? Excusez-moi. That don't make much sense. What do you mean for this date? See, I've never used this website before. What do you mean for this date? There's no data. Did I ask? Listen. You don't need to interrupt me with your probably over response to a basic dispute or something. Yeah, well, that's really disappointing. I was hoping to see the map for today. Currently, you need to know how this works. Oh, here we go. Here's where your key is. It's a scale, but it doesn't tell me. It doesn't tell me Uh, I wasn't asking for that, actually. Data not available for the state. Data not available for the state. But why? Um, come on. So, nothing now. What if I go back out a few hours? Is that possible? Yeah. Using UTC. That's a long way back, and it still is claiming... Oh, wait. Oh, wow. That is laggy as hell. I don't want you to be that laggy. What are you doing, bud? It's using, obviously, a global time slash 24-hour slash military time. Which, obviously, is a Lamotican I'm not used to. Okay. How about now? Oh no, it is telling me the available data for this day. Are you serious? What? Now, how in the heck does that work? What? If you're familiar with this website, let me know how they work, because this is bullshit. Also, I have a broken scroll wheel, so you're gonna have a zipper problem here. Okay, how about now? Am I zoomed out enough? No, not for your Royal Highness. What? He got it at like 10 a.m. his time, and it's telling me they have literally nothing. I literally want to see what the warmth is, where the pocket is now, because that was actually yesterday at like 10 a.m. that it was like right here, as you saw before, right here, right? It could have moved by now. It could have moved east, and if it did, then this water's gonna be a lot warmer. Oh, it'd be a good idea to do that, but unfortunately, I can't do that. But it just says scale. It doesn't tell me what that temperature is supposed to be. Because if this is warm enough to sustain a hurricane keeping at least a category 4 at landfall, then I also wonder, because if it does continue, because again, Milton currently right now is about here. If it does make landfall, and it gets even more intense than it is right now, because again, as we established, because of two and a half hours ago, it was matched to both Hurricane Andrew and also to Katrina already, and it's a toddler in age with Milton, and it hits this pocket, it's going to intensify further. That's an inevitability. So could reach potentially 200 miles an hour highest wind speeds, which would be insane. And it still does direct landfall in Tampa, which would make it the 100-year storm, which again, that's what this is referring to, because they've just over 100 years since they've been hit directly. It's the most narrow point of the peninsula that is Florida. So, my theory and my curiosity is, with this extreme band of warmth, right? Right off the coast. And this trajectory is to do this. It's gonna hit the closest piece of this band of warmth. Will it re-intensify when it hits that? And also, now that I think about it, will it follow a similar path to some other hurricanes that have done the same thing? Where once it crosses Florida, it actually goes and starts following the East Coast. Because if it does, it might follow this band of warmth. And I guarantee this is going way further north. And if it follows that, I wonder if it'll maintain a full hurricane status and be very strong. It's one of the models. Exact seeking when it's an hour long is tough. Here. There we go. And again, mind you, this is 10 a.m. East Coast time that this was being looked at. So it's probably from even earlier than that. This NOAA, this NOAA model. It was there. Now it's currently here. They got the major hurricane, right? But they figured it'd be a 3 or a 4. It's obviously, as we all know right now, a Cat 5. And it's getting much more intense. and it has it going direct landfall, boom, right onto basically Sarasota, really, is the town that will be the most direct if this is 100% correct. It's already curving this way, and they figure it's just going to cross that current. But again, if we use history, I'm willing to bet it might actually follow that oceanic current that is extremely warm. Again, because they also like to seek out those warm pockets, because like a sentient life form, they like to intensify themselves. They know what gives them life. So I am curious if it could do that. But at this point, the main thing to keep in mind, again, like other people have mentioned before, and you've probably already seen at least at one point during the stream or this VOD if you're watching later, is if you have not evacuated already, you definitely need to, especially if you're on the west coast of Florida. I would say between Fort Myers, Cape Coral, in fact, actually, I would say probably Naples, or as I like to call it, Nipples, because I'm 5. Naples, Roland Martin's hometown, by the way. I grew up with fishing with Roland Martin. Well, I grew up as an exaggerated term. It's not unimportant. Naples, and I can't remember the other town next to Naples, but Naples, Florida, up through Cedar Key. I would highly recommend you, obviously, everybody in that area, especially within, I'd say, like 60 miles of the coastline, or as Jack, again, Joogsquad, that we just saw, said, who, again, is a lifelong Floridian. He lives in the Tampa Bay area on the coastline, so he knows this shit. He's always, like most people there, he's going to keep his eye on that shit, and he's going to be very invested. He recommends, and a lot of other people have recommended, that you don't want to be within 60 miles of the edge of the eye wall. And the eye wall yesterday was huge, and the eye hadn't even fully formed because it was a tropical storm still. Now it has a full eye as of 2-3 hours ago because it's a Cat 5. You need to evacuate. Like, if you're within that vicinity between Naples area and Cedar Key area of the West Coast, you need to make sure you get the heck out of there. Stat, if we're going to use medical terms, ASAP, immediately, yesterday, 5 years ago, and evacuate. I understand the morbid interest in writing it out and staying there in your house. Just board it up and get on, be ready to have access to your roof or something. But seriously, get the fuck out of there. Evacuate. Don't be suicidal. Because if it's already in its infantile toddler stage, off of Yucatan still, a Cat fucking 5, matching Hurricane Andrew to a T in millibars and in wind speeds, and thus Katrina, almost to a T, it's just, as of 2.5 hours ago, 22 millibars off. Oh, Hurricane Michael, that was one of the ones I was forgetting. Hit the panhandle of Florida at a Cat 5 in 2018. It was that recent, Michael? It wasn't Harvey also? Was Harvey 2018 or 2017? I don't think it was more recent than that. I swear it was either 2017 or 2018. I don't remember. I thought Michael was earlier on. That was 2018? Jesus Christ. Maria. Yeah, to Puerto Rico, it made a landfall as a Cat 4. But, do you remember Puerto Rico? I didn't mention that in my Helene video, but I should have. I thought of it after the fact, though. I was like, actually, again, lack of response and fucks to give from FEMA, Red Cross, and the feds and National Guard for Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico, it was non-existent. Again, like, all you had was Trump showing up there for a photo op to fucking paper towels. Basically, that was it. Maui, again, history is important to use. Maui is reflective of they don't give a fuck and they will never help. Katrina, I think it was our first major natural disaster, especially if we're getting to a hurricane, that shows they don't care, they don't want to help, and only if they feel forced to via PR, they will begrudgingly finally send some people there, FEMA and National Guard, to aid you. Very begrudgingly, and they will try to get out of there as soon as they possibly can. Maria is actually a great one to think of because of that. Mikhail, 2018. I think I might vaguely remember Michael now that I think about it. Yeah, I do. That's the one I was thinking of, that like decimated Cedar Key and stuff. Yeah. Okay, that makes more sense. Yeah, now I understand that. That's fair. Um, I'm surprised there's not like that many latest coming in. I wonder if there's just so many that they don't know what to do with themselves. Cat 6 trending. Cat 6, category 6 doesn't exist. It's not that important, but like I don't know. It's just one of those little pet peeves I have. See what I'm talking about, by the way, here? You see the eye in this thing? Look at it. Look at it form right here. And notice, it has this little eye thing. And there's right at the end. Right at the end. Look at these little waves, ripples. That's literally exactly what Milton here looked like at 10 a.m. East Coast time yesterday. That's exactly what Milton looked like. I swear, this might become its own cyclone, its own hurricane, a partner hurricane. It's interesting because now I'm looking at it, it did spawn on its own. In fact, you can start seeing rotations, by the way, around the eye at the very, very, very end. Yeah, let me get full screen. Look at this. Look at it form, right? And then look at the eye. And yeah, you can see violent rotation, actually. A lot of speed in that cyclonic rotation. Right here. Look, that's rotation. So then that could fully become its own proper, like, secondary twin storm. Whether it remains a tropical storm or depression, or it actually forms into a full hurricane. That's something to keep your eye on. Because that could form into its own thing if Milton doesn't just absorb it in its vortex. Don't underrate that, for sure. That's something to keep in mind. 157 miles an hour is the cutoff for Cat 5. Why 157? Why some randomly arbitrary odd number? Huh? Cat 6, 192. Cat 6 does not exist. But that's why I actually clicked on the Cat 6, because I'm like, it's trending. There we go. Somebody's right on it. Or can you be rated as a Cat 5? Cat 6 presently does not exist. Correct. Yeah. Yeah. Saturday. Maybe a Cat 2 yesterday. Probably Cat 3. Maybe Cat 4 at most today. Hurricane officially. Cat 4. Cat 5. Cat 6, if it would exist. That's literally the perfect oversimplification for the developments around all the experts that have been watching and predicting Hurricane Milton's development. The perfect synopsis, synopsis, sorry. The perfect synopsis of Milton is exactly this. So 48 hours. That's it. Just 48 hours time. And all of the best climatologists and meteorologist experts, hurricane experts, were like, Saturday, maybe a Cat 2 at best. Yesterday, probably Cat 3. Maybe a Cat 4 at a stretch, but it's probably only going to be Cat 3. Today, 6 a.m. It's a hurricane officially. 9 a.m. Already a Cat 4. So from Cat 1 to Cat 4, 3 hours time. 3 hours later, Cat 5. And now, again, if a Cat 6 would exist, it'd probably be, 157, yeah, it'd probably be 192, 198 miles an hour winds. And then at that point, it'd be a Cat 6 if it existed. The funny thing is literally, I was watching that thing from Joogsquad yesterday, Jack Tenney. And I'm just sitting here like, how is it not obviously going to be a Cat 5? Like, if you take in history, which is the best educator you can have, and then you look at the temperature maps of the Gulf and its trajectory and how it looks at the moment at 10 a.m. Eastern yesterday, it's like, this could not be more blatantly obvious going to become a Cat 5. And they're like, yeah, it's a Cat 4 at most, but that's a real stretch. It's going to be Cat 3 yesterday at that time. And it's now, already it's a Cat 5. Perfect synopsis of Milton's development. Could not be better. Could not be better. That is just well succinctly done, just to keep it overly simplified. Absolutely. Yeah. I again, being a West Coaster, I associate the categories of a hurricane kind of like the magnitudes of an earthquake. So, God damn it, I hate stupid jokes like that, but I love them at the same time. This is way too up my alley. Fucking Cat 6 Ethernets, man. The storms are brutal. That's really what happened to the Twin Towers during 9/11. Let's be honest. Uh, it's a bad electrical trick. Anyway, I hate that. I love that, man. I am too Scandinavian for my own good. Anyway, yeah. So I associate like magnitudes of earthquakes as like the West Coast equivalent to the categories of a hurricane. So we in earthquake terms, especially considering I'm in the Cascadia tricentennial subduction zone, which my dyslexic self likes to say subduction by accident. And I'm like, I said seduction again, didn't I? Seduction zone. Hey baby, you've entered the seduction zone. Earth's gonna seduct you. Seduct? No, see, I can't do it. I can't be dyslexic and intentionally try to say it wrong because then my brain corrects itself because it's me dyslexic. It has to reverse it back to the correct order. Oh, that's annoying. Oh, the Earth is seducing you. That's what I'm trying to say. Anyway, stupid dyslexia. Anyway, oh, that threw me off. God damn it. I am way too attention deficit sometimes for my own good. What was I trying to say? Right. So, in earthquake terms, especially megaquake terms, so far in history, there is only registered, I believe the highest was a 9.5, I believe, on the Richter scale, which is apparently been obsolete for 30 or 40 years. And they use magnitude of scale now, supposedly. Whatever the hell that's supposed to mean, however different that's supposed to be. But if you talk to people along the Ring of Fire, especially the east edge of the Ring of Fire, there is consistent belief that there is such a thing that can happen, which would be a magnitude 10 plus of an earthquake. And it wouldn't be too surprising if they had to increase their scale. I guess this gets magnitude scale, not Richter, whatever. Who the fuck knows if that's legit? And I wouldn't be surprised. And so, again, things change. So there is a chance that if there is consistent enough rise in intensity of hurricanes, typhoons, cyclones, depending on where you are in the world, they could end up creating an official category 6. Because to me, that's kind of the same equivalency. They're equivalent to each other. You have the hurricane ratings and we have the other ones. Yeah, look at that. The Cat 6 show goes, shut the fuck up. It's always funny. Actually, yeah, this kind of, now that I think about it, this feels like exactly what an OCD tech nerd would be like doing with their Ethernet cable, their Cat 6 Ethernet cable. It's just like, because you have to have your curves, and then all of a sudden it's like, perfect. No, that makes it more funny in my opinion. Merida at the moment. Actually, I remembered it being over here. Yeah, you can go back earlier in this stream and check, but I'm pretty sure it was actually more right off this tip of this point here on the Yucatan. But anyway, yeah. If it existed, it would, and if it existed, the Milton would very quickly become clearly a Cat 6. But at least it would give us a lot of in-depth connection. But yeah. I don't really have much more to say. I've already pretty much said everything I wanted to say about Milton. And again, I highly recommend you guys go check out Jack Tenney's channel, that is Joogsquad, because again, he is a native Floridian to the West Coast, and in fact, the coastline of Tampa Bay. So he can definitely tell you, and so can his neighbors, because they have such a tight-knit community in that specific town he's in, because, you know, most of the others are rich fucks, or at least want to be rich people, so they're just dicks to everyone else. They want to control the policies and everything else, so their cities are in their pocket, and they're just doing all these stupid, idiotic policies that everyone else hates and gets hurt by, because they want to be exclusive and everything. But his specific community and town is like, it's like they've known each other forever, and it's like they're literally one big family, which I feel like gives him and his community even more credibility when it comes down to this, because there's all different ages. There's people that are probably in their 80s in that community that are talking about this and mentioning, like, again, why this is clearly going to be the 100 years storm, because it's just over 100 years since Tampa Bay has been directly hit, and especially by such an intense hurricane. So evacuate, evacuate, evacuate. It's no fucking joke. Get the fuck out of there. Go to his channel, check out that stream, and he's going to be as consistently and safely as he can. He's going to be documenting the damage and the cleanup, not just from Milton now, but also from the remnants or the brushing of Helene that happened, because somehow they got a lot of bad damage to houses leveled from Helene, just barely skirting them. And Jack Tenney's like Joogsquad is the perfect channel to look at because he's native, he's from there, and I guarantee him, and actually probably even Brandon Jordan, that is Jigging with Jordan on YouTube, I all but guarantee he's going to be covering it too, because he's from the Lakeland area, but he's all through there. So he's probably going to be covering it as much as he can too in his efforts to try to help people and give aid and rescue people and everything. But definitely Joogsquad, Jack Tenney. Check out that channel, because if you want a local perspective, especially once he's able to come back safely to the Tampa Bay area after Milton, he's going to have a lot of vlogs, a lot of videos logging the damage and logging the rescue efforts and logging everything else. And he's very straightforward and honest. So like, if there's no FEMA, if there's no National Guard, if there's no Red Cross, or if they are genuinely trying to prevent and blockade volunteer aid caravans, flights, rescue flights, scouting flights, which are of course the ones to assess the damage and try to find anybody that needs rescuing that you might not necessarily see from the ground or might not necessarily be able to access really with anything other than maybe military specialized vehicles because of debris and everything. You know, if that's happening, he's going to document that via video, photograph, and he's going to talk about it. That's a guarantee. That you can always assure that Jack's going to do that. So again, that's why I recommend you keep track of his channel. You don't have to subscribe, but as long as you check in with it every so often, you're going to be able to get a lot of good updates from somebody who's a native, who's lived there his entire life, where they're going to get a direct hit from Milton. That's the best thing I can encourage, because citizen journalism like that, especially from locals and natives, is by far the most reliable, trustworthy, and best thing you can get, because it's firsthand experience. It's lived experience. They know exactly what's happening, and they're literally documenting it in person, firsthand, what's happened to them in their towns and the places that get hit by the disasters like hurricanes. So Jack Tenney Joogsquad is a perfect place. I highly recommend, I direct you to go to and check out and follow for the next few months, especially after Milton hits, let alone currently. There's great information prior to Milton to prepare you, and of course, great information in terms of the damage that Helene already did. Considering houses are leveled and entire communities are buried in sand dunes from Helene, just barely scraping them, you can imagine what a direct hit from fucking Milton's gonna do. It's scary. But that said, stay safe out there. If you're in that vicinity, especially if you're within the Cedar Key to Naples area, that vicinity of the West Coast and within like 60 miles of the coast, I highly recommend you get the fuck out of there and evacuate yesterday, pretty much. Because it is no fucking joke. Especially considering, again, like I said, that region, specifically Tampa Bay, has not had a direct hit from a hurricane, especially a major hurricane, in over 100 years. There's a reason why it's called the 100 Years Storm. It's not a sensationalism. It's not exaggeration. It's literally a historic event, and therefore they probably aren't that prepared for it. Especially considering, again, as I keep mentioning, they ripped out all their mangroves. Because catering to rich people and luxury tourists. So storm surge is going to be completely unprotected from. I digress. That's all I have to say. Thank you for checking this out. And please stay safe out there. Don't be stupid and risk your life staying in. Again, like I said, I personally can understand wanting to ride it out. I am the kind of person that gets excited for this kind of stuff and would love to experience like a tornado. I would love to literally be right there on the ground in a tornado and experience whatever the fuck happens. I understand that almost storm chaser / disaster chasing kind of mentality, especially wanting to document it firsthand when it happens in your area. But it's, especially with a storm like this, in all circumstances considered, this is no joke. Don't get yourself killed. Get the fuck out of there. Stay safe, and I hope to see you around at some point soon. I pushed the wrong button. I've been doing this for basically a decade. Okay. Oh, jeez. Yeah. Just remember, cat sticks, storms are no jokes.